Hello everyone, we are going to continue with our lecture for tutorial 7. Next thing that we are going to talk about is entering date and time values. So date and time field ensures that user enter the date and time correctly, indicated using type attribute, date, time, and date, time, local, month, and week. So in this case, we have set the data type of the visit date field to date. So the type is date. We know we are looking at the date, not week or month or something like that. And on page 530, figure 7.25 is showing you the basically various type that you can have, the date, the format of it, how the user can see it, the date and time, local, how the user can choose the time and date, and also the month, how it's based on the monthly base and or based on the weekly base. So you can look at the example on figure 7.25 on page 530. The next thing that we will talk about is creating a selection list, which is important on the forms. Normally they want to be able to select like a criteria that they are looking for. Basically, a selection list is a list box that presents users with a group of possible value for the data field. The list is created using the select tag and option element. So this is basically the select tag. You can open it, you can have the name in there, and then you will have the option tag with value and the text that you're going to have in there. So we are going to look at an example. Basically, name is the name of the data field and the value are the possible field values, and the text is the text entries that you're going to have. So let's look at the example in here. So we have the field name, we have our select, the name is order type, the ID is order, and in here we have our options. So we have a value to choose from, like different order 1, order 2, order 3, order 4, and we can actually give it a name. So order 1 could be, the type could be the carry out. So you have the name in there. So basically, you have the text in there. So this is the text format. So the value, you can call it like order 1, order 2, order 3. And then the text that is going to show in there is carry out. The text that's going to show in there is delivery, and so on. By default, a selection list appears as a drop-down list box. So if you don't mention it, it's going to be a drop-down list. To display a selection list as a scroll box, you can use the size attribute to select to the select element. So when you are using select, if you don't put anything, it's going to be a drop-down menu. But if you want it to be a scroll box, you can put the size equals to a value and then also continue with the rest of the format of your select statement and then close your select tag. So the value is the number of options that the selection list display at one time, if you want it as a scroll. By default, selection lists allow only one selection from the list option. So if you don't mention it, you can only choose one. To allow multiple items to be selected, you can have the option to put select multiple in there. So there are two ways for users to select multiple items from a selection list. For non-contagious selection, you can press and hold the control key while making the selection. For contagious selection, you can select the first item, then you press and hold the shift key, and then select the last item in the range. So these are the two ways that the user can select multiple items. You can also group selection options. Organize selection list option by placing them in the option group. Using the opt group element, we can put select opt group, and then we put the label, and then of course the other options, and then the text that will appear, and then option, the text that will appear, and then we close the opt group select and the select statement. Where label or label one is the label for the different group of options that we are going to have. So this is the example of selection option. So option group labels, here we have appetizers, and then we have salads. So this, we are using a group. So in the group of appetizers, we have these. So these are the text that will appear, and these are the values that you can put in there. But remember, they will show up there. And then we divided it to the option group salads as well. And then you have the salads, and then you have these different values that you're going to have. So this is the output that you will see. Our starter menu will have two, it has two group labels, the appetizer group and the salad group, and under it you have a selection of these three and the selection of these three. We can also create option buttons. Sometimes we call them radio buttons. Maybe you're familiar with that. So unlike the selection list, the option appear as separate control in the web form. They are created with a group of input element with the type, attribute value of radio. So you have the same, you can put the input, the name of it, the value, and then the type would be the radio for radio button. So in here, the name is the name of the data field. The values you could have are the field value associated with each option that you're going to have, and then the type, of course, is the radio. So you can set an option button to select as the default by adding a checked attribute to the input element. So sometimes by default you want that radio button to be checked. You can just put the checked after the type in there. So this is the example that you can see for the radio button. So in here we have the yes and no, the value for the yes and no field that you can see. So the value here for yes and no. So these are different values that you're going to have. Another option that people might want to use on the survey form is creating a checkbox. Checkboxes are basically designed for fields that record the presence or absence of an object or event. They are creating again using the input element, and the type would be checkbox, same as the radio button. The value is the attribute contains the value of the field, and then when the checkbox is basically checked, and the type is basically the checkbox. So in this example, we have a checkbox. So by default, a checkbox is not checked. So if you want it, like basically if you want it to be checked, if you want it, the default to be checked, you have to put the check in there. So in this example, you have the value is yes, the value of the checkbox is checked, and then you have the type which shows the checkbox. Also you have a label for your checkbox. Add me to your mailing list for great coupons and special. So sometimes by default you might want it to be checked, because I mean, if you want it to be checked, you have to specify that. But remember, by default, the checkbox is not checked. Users have to check it. Also, we can create a text area box. Again, you can put text area. and then the name in there, and then the text. The text is the default value of the data field. The default browser style is to create a text area box that's about 20 characters wide and 2 or 3 lines high. You can increase that, the size of box, using the CSS style, of course. HTML also supports the rows and column attribute to set the text area size. So if you want a bigger size, you can either apply the CSS style or you can use the HTML. You can use this tag to basically increase the size in terms of rows and columns. So the row attribute specifies the number of lines that you want it to have, and the columns will specify the number of characters that you are going to have. So this is an example of when you are using the text area. You can put the field name, and this is what you're going to get. So the default size is about 20 characters and 2 to 3 lines high. So if you wanted to make it bigger, you can either use the HTML tag here or the CSS style sheet. And this concludes the second part of this tutorial, which is 7.2. Okay, have a good day. Bye-bye.